Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. I have another card from Picket Studios' April release, Graceful Koi. This is a gorgeous stamp set. There are 3 detailed koi images and they are each accompanied by a solid image stamp. These stamps can be used to add color to your koi, or they could, as I have done, be used to create shadows. And all on a background layering stencils to create sun glints in the water. I'm starting off with a panel of Bristol Smooth cardstock. I'm using one of the medium-sized life-changing blender brushes by Picket Studio to apply soft bands of color. I'm alternating back and forth between Simon Says Stamp's Positively Saturated Ink Surf and Limelicious. Although I want the background to remain soft because I will be stenciling over top of it, I build up the color a little bit by adding a couple of layers of ink. I want to create the illusion that there are reflections of light dancing on the water, so I am going to apply the ink to a stencil called Details of a Wing. This stencil is available in both A2 and slimline formats. I only had the slimline, but the design was perfect for creating those bands of sun glints, so I went with it. The same colors of ink are reapplied, building up that color over the stencil. The stencil wasn't quite wide enough for my panel, so I'm just going to flip it around and catch the portion that I missed. You may have noticed that I do not change my brush when I go between the colors. I just simply give it a good rub on some paper towel and it's good to go. The stamps with the solid images are laid out on the panel as I get ready to stamp my shadows. The sentiment was put in place as a placeholder so that there would be room for it afterwards, but then it was removed. The images are being stamped with one of Simon's dye ink, Smoke. This is a soft gray. Typically, when stamping a solid image, you may have to ink it up 2 or 3 times to get a nice, even layer of ink. That is not what I'm going for. The uneven application of the ink makes the shadows look more natural. I mentioned that I love Picket Studio Stamp Scrubber. It does a great job of cleaning up those stamps quickly. And I'm back to stenciling. I want to create the effect of the water rippling from the movement of the fish. I'm going to be working with a great stencil set called Layers of Clouds. One of the larger stencils is positioned over 2 of the fish and held in place with some low-tack purple tape. Using a large life-changing blender brush, surf is applied to the open area of the stencil. And the next stencil is popped into place and fits together like a puzzle. I switch over to a darker blue called Ocean. I don't want it too dark, so I tap a little bit of the ink off on some paper towel before it's applied. Such a pretty soft effect. Then I create a second set of ripples over the 3rd fish. As before, the softest blue surf is applied first. The smaller stencil is fitted into position, and then the darker ink Ocean is applied. I'm really loving the soft, subtle effect of this stenciled background. And then out comes the spatter box, which I admit looks a little bit worse for wear, but you know what? It does the job and it keeps my work surface clean. I like to use white gouache that has been slightly watered down for my spatter. I'm using a fan brush that Picket Studio has available in their shop. I really like the various effects that you can get with this brush. If you tap it hard, you get larger spatter. If you tap it lightly, it's finer. And for this watery background, I want both. The detailed koi images are being stamped on Neenah Classic Crest 110-pound cardstock using Picket Studios Intense Black ink. Initially, the sentiment was stamped with the fish. I thought that I would give it some dimension on the card, but then decided that really the koi needed to be center stage. So that idea was scrapped and I ended up putting the sentiment directly on the background. And the bonus of a stamping platform, when your first impression isn't perfect, you can do it again. The koi are colored very simply with Copic markers. I'm working with YR09, 04, and 02. I start at the base of the tail and the fins with the deepest orange 09. I work towards the tip with the lighter tones 04 and 02. This set of inks blends easily and there's no need to add a second coat. For the body of the fish, the dark tone is placed around the eyes and the two outside edges. The center of the body is finished off with the mid-tone and then the head is highlighted with the 02. For the koi that had the cute little dot details on their body, I just simply alternated between the three colors. I'm using the coordinating dies to cut out my fish and use a little bit of low-tack purple tape to hold the die in place so it does not shift as it goes through the die cutter. Now I'm ready to stamp my sentiment directly on my card front. I like to tip my MISTI up and hold the door open so that I can see that it is lined up with the grid. And it is good to go, so I ink up my stamp with Picket Fence Studios Intense Black ink. Something I did not mention before is that when I was applying the spatter, I did try to avoid the area where the sentiment was going to be stamped, but I still got some on there. To make sure that the sentiment is nice and smooth and bold, I am stamping it twice and then I'm going to clear emboss it. To minimize warping on the panel, I do let my heat tool come to its maximum temperature and then I apply the heat both to the front and the back of the panel. My card front measures 4 by 5 1/4 inches and I'm going to be matting it with black cardstock. For a thin reveal, this panel measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 inches. The coordinating dies are used to cut Picket Fence Studios black foam. I'm always adding dimensional elements to my cards, and so I consider myself a bit of a connoisseur of foam. So where do I start? Firstly, this is a very high quality dense foam. I've been using it a lot lately and I haven't had any problems with stretching. And even though it is thick and dense, it die cuts beautifully. And of course, I love that it is double adhesive backed, no more glue. To try it out, you can buy a sampler pack which includes panels of both black and white foam. That's what I started with, and now I have the big mega rolls that are about 4 inches wide and 50 feet long. The foam and the other products that I've used to make this card can be found in the description of this YouTube video or on my blog at bonniecarolee.com. Seriously, if you love having dimension on your cards, you need to check this out. And as easy as can be, my koi are foam backed and they're going to be offset on the shadows. I've just positioned the fish because I want to also stamp some cute little bubble details that are included with the stamp set. Once I have the bubbles exactly where I want them, I can remove the fish and stamp them with Versamark ink. Of course, after I make a few minor adjustments. I add some white embossing powder, my heat tool is preheated, and I apply the heat front and back. Card front is adhered to an A2 size card base that is in landscape orientation and top folding. Almost all of my cards will make their way to the recipient through the mail, so I like to use a really sturdy cardstock. Although there is undoubtedly many, I like to use Neenah Classic Crest 110 pound. Before any of the backing paper is removed from the foam-backed koi, I first lay them out and get them into position. When I'm happy with the layout, then I just go ahead, remove the backing paper, and pop them into place. And it doesn't get any easier than this. The koi are positioned offset on their shadows. I'm going to finish up by embellishing this card with some pretty white and soft blue sequins from a beautiful mix called On a Cloudy Day. The sequins are used to highlight the sentiment, and they are also placed in and around the fish just to add some more detail to that watery background. And if you watch my videos, you know what's coming next. I love to top up sequins and confetti with Nouveau Crystal Drops Morning Dew. And that wraps up this card featuring Picket Fence Studios' Graceful Koi, and all on a watery stenciled background to create the effect of sun glints. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I appreciate your visit.